County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. It is 2:03 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're in Building 1, Room 280. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel or join by calling 360-252-9020. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. Vice Chair Ty Messer joining us via Zoom. Commissioner Gary Edwards in the boardroom, as well as County Manager Ramiro Chavez and Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell. We have Public Works staff joining us today. The topic for today's agenda is Illicit Discharge Detection and Elimination Code Updates, Thurston County Code Chapter 15.07. This is an informational session, so who am I passing this to? Tim?
I will take it. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tim Wilson. I'm the Water Resources Manager with Public Works. I also have with me today, first of all, Larry Schaffner virtually. Larry is the Stormwater Planning Coordinator with CPED. Also have Ryan Langen, who is our Public Works Stormwater Operations Manager. We are briefing you today, to dial it in, we are talking about the storm and surface water utility. The stormwater operations and maintenance team, of which Ryan is the manager, is responsible.
Can folks hear me? Have we started yet?
Oh, have you? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Messer. We did start.
I forgot to unmute, sorry.
Yeah, you guys have been on mute the whole time, so.
Okay.
Could you mind to start it again?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start then.
Sorry.
Rewind.
No worries. Go ahead.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
do I need to open the
Yes,
meeting
please.
again? Okay, well, good afternoon. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. It is 2:05 p.m. We're in Building 1, Room 280. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel or join by calling 360-252-9020, pin number 1234. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. Vice Chair Ty Messer joining us via Zoom. Commissioner Gary Edwards here in the boardroom, as well as County Manager Ramiro Chavez and Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell. The topic on today's agenda is Illicit Discharge Detection and Elimination Code Updates, Thurston County Code Chapter 1507. It's an informational session, and I'll pass it back to Tim.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tim Wilson. I'm the Water Resources Manager with Public Works. I also have with me Larry Schaffner, who's on Zoom. Larry is the Stormwater Planning Coordinator with CPED, and also Ryan Langen, who is the Stormwater Operations and Maintenance Manager with Public Works. This is a briefing that is related to the storm and surface water utility. Ryan's team performs a host of functions that are largely driven by our municipal stormwater permit, so it is regulatory driven. Some of those items include private and commercial stormwater inspections, and also responding to any unauthorized discharges to our stormwater system. So Ryan is going to report out today on some regulatory requirements within the permit that require some somewhat minor code updates. So with that, I will hand it to Ryan.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ryan Langen, Stormwater Operations Manager with Public Works. Today I'm here to talk about efforts to update Thurston County Code Chapter 1507 related to...
We have a PowerPoint, do we have
Oh,
access to the PowerPoint? Who is driving the PowerPoint?
Usually it's loaded up.
No, staff is the one who drives the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Just for the benefit of the public, the commissioners have the PowerPoint, so.
Okay.
So, well, go ahead.
Okay. Chapter 1507, Illicit Discharge Detection and Elimination. The purpose and intent of this chapter is to protect Thurston County's surface water and groundwater quality by providing minimum requirements for eliminating, reducing, or controlling the discharge of pollutants to publicly owned storm drainage systems within unincorporated Thurston County. Follow along, next slide.
Could Larry or Angela share their screen and show the PowerPoint online?
If we give Angela a moment, I think she may be able to find it. Angela, can you find the PowerPoint in the presentation materials?
I got it. I could bring it up.
Yeah, you should have access to share your screen, Larry. Perfect, thank you.
Larry to the rescue.
Thank you, Larry.
Next slide, Larry. So for today's briefing, I'm going to provide a little bit of background, the purpose of the update, some of the proposed changes, and an overview of 1507 code update process, and finally some next steps. Next slide. So the county has been regulated under the municipal stormwater permit, also known as an NPDES Phase 2 permit or National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit since 2007. The permit is updated every 5 years, and each permit typically has new or additional requirements to be implemented. The objective of the ordinance is to provide guidance on the necessary measures to prevent non-stormwater discharges or polluted runoff from entering the county stormwater system, with the goal of complying with water quality standards and protecting beneficial uses of receiving waters. The permit identifies minimum requirements related to illicit discharges, source control codes, ordinances, and enforcement policies. The code is applied to all of unincorporated Thurston County and is not applicable within the incorporated city limits such as Olympia, Tumwater, and Lacey. They're all obligated under their municipal stormwater permits to go through a similar process. Next slide. So an example of an illicit discharge, here's a picture of Public Works crews responding to a diesel spill, cleaning up the diesel prior to it entering our drainage system. Next slide, Larry. This particular photo's an example of source control. What this photo is showing is a leaky dumpster and it's draining towards a catch basin. So this would be something identified during a source control inspection once this program's implemented. If staff were to observe something similar to this, corrective actions they would take is they would work with the property manager or the property owner, providing technical assistance, requesting in this particular situation that they reach out to the service provider that provides this garbage compactor to have it fixed or repaired or replaced to prevent any further leaking or discharge of fluids. And then also we would work with them and their staff just on general housekeeping, be able to identify this stuff in the future and recognize it in a more timely fashion versus us seeing it when we perform an annual inspection. Next slide. So why are we updating the code? So the Department of Ecology has identified 2 significant changes related to source control that must be implemented. The first is to adopt and make effective an ordinance requiring the application of source control pest management practices for pollutant generating sources associated with existing land uses and activities. The second is no later than January 1st of 2023, the county shall implement progressive enforcement policy that requires sites to comply with stormwater requirements within a reasonable time frame. Again, this is one of many permit conditions the county is obligated to implement as part of this 5-year permit cycle. Next slide, Larry. So there were also some additional changes that were not required by ecology, but were either based upon lessons learned or made to improve the clarity or usability of this particular chapter. We're proposing to update terminology, sequencing, and definitions so that they're consistent with existing permit language, the recently updated Drainage Design and Erosion Control Manual, an update of departments that have changed over the years. Example, currently within the existing chapter, it references resource stewardship, which is no longer a department within the county. And then we added compliance agreements as a pathway for the county to work with business or property owners to resolve any issues prior to going down a compliance pathway. Next slide. Some of the benefits of the update include compliance with our stormwater permit, other applicable rules, and then the code gets brought up to current standards by following the approaches in the permit. Property owners will be required to apply reasonable, technology-based, and water quality-based best management practices to prevent or reduce the adverse impacts of stormwater. Next slide. So, kind of how we got to where we are and what the impacts are. Initially, we worked with Thurston County Environmental Health to obtain a list of businesses within the county. And initially, they identified 779 businesses within our jurisdiction. 599 of those had activities identified as having potential sources of pollutants through either the standard industrial classification system or the North American industry classification system, which describes kind of the primary business activities that will occur on those sites. We were able to screen out 416 of those as not having any potential to discharge to the county stormwater system. The remaining.
Are you on a separate page? I'm just, you're.
No, I just had a bunch of background on how we're getting to the 42 sites. We started with this massive list.
Okay,
And I'm just
good
trying
enough. I'm just trying to follow along, didn't see it.
Sorry about that. We're able to screen out 416 as not having any potential to discharge to the county stormwater system. The remaining 183 went through further desktop reviews and then also a field windshield survey narrowing the list of sites down to 42 after removing any duplicates or other anomalies. Of those 42 sites that would be regulated under this change, 15 are currently being inspected under other existing stormwater programs. The permit requirements require us to inspect 20% of those 42 or 8 sites annually. So we see this as having very minimal impact to those sites. And again, if the staff does observe pollutants or other potential sources, our emphasis or focus is on technical assistance working with those business or property owners. Typically, what we foresee and then what we've heard from a phase 1 jurisdiction, which is larger regulated municipalities, is it typically comes down to good housekeeping practices is what the vast majority of responses are. Next slide. This is just a general overall schedule or process. We did our internal review. It was internal work group with CPED staff and public works staff. We proposed some draft language, routed that to the prosecutor's office for review. So next steps would be a public outreach process, a public hearing, adoption, and then hopefully having this change or version of 1507 going into effect by August 1st, 2022. Next slide. So again, next steps, provide public outreach on the update. What we envision for our update process is creating a webpage on our website about the proposed changes with the ability for the public to submit comment to us. We would send a postcard mailer out to the 42 identified properties that may be affected by these changes. After that public comment period, the internal working group would get back together, go through and discuss comments. We would update that draft again, submit an AIS for the public hearing in late June to hold the public hearing July 19th, hopefully, and then adopt and update the chapter, making it effective August 1st. With that, take any questions you might have.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
August 1st, what's the magic date about August 1st?
That is within our municipal stormwater permit. That is the deadline we're supposed to have these changes completed by.
And is that like every 5 years? You said something about every 5 years.
So our permit has a 5-year time frame or window to it, and each permit has different obligations. So when we're issued a new permit, there's gonna be new regulatory requirements that we would have to comply with within that next
And
permit.
that's an RCW and they take your birthday away, or what do they do? You know, I mean, we've had a lot of requirements that say we've got this certain date, and, oh, we're about 6 years out past that date. You know, so I'm just trying to figure out
Sure.
the regulatory process here, what do they do? What happened?
Larry, do you have any insights into what potentially would happen if we weren't able to achieve the August 1st date?
Yeah, sure. For the permit, if we miss a compliance deadline, we have to self-report to ecology within 30 days of becoming aware of non-compliance. In addition to that, we need to describe to ecology our plan and timeline to bring ourselves into compliance. Ecology would review and consider that and have a conversation with us if that meets their expectation and approval.
You know, I'm not trying to get around it, I'm just curious.
Yeah, what happens if we don't
Right,
come into
I mean,
compliance?
Larry, could you stop sharing your screen, please? Thank you.
And then the sites, you talked about some sites. I mean, you ended up with 42 sites, but 100 and some, or, you know, a whole bunch of sites. What designates a site?
So within the permit, they gave us those industry codes of business that have pollutant generating sources based on their
Like
practice.
Maybe a body shop?
Exactly.
Or something like that?
So they gave us specific criteria that they felt we should focus our efforts in on. And some of I jotted down a half dozen, and to your point, auto parts store, tavern, coffee stand, chiropractic office, quick stop like a 7-Eleven.
I'm curious about a coffee stand.
I'm not sure in the grand scheme of things how many pollutants they can produce or generate, but it did meet the criteria of activity.
I guess the reason I ask that question is, I find that government is over-regulatory in the double super excess as a general rule. So, you know, they want to have 150 of them listed on here. Okay, we've got 27 coffee stands. Okay, what's the deal? Oh, well, we just thought maybe it'd be a good deal. I've never can get good answers. Now, I'm not being critical. I'm just saying why. You know, why is it that we always end up in these situations? The body shop, I mean, I understand that. The chemicals for paints and
Sure.
thinners and all that. And the idea is to keep it from getting out of the water, out into the water, basically, right? And then we have no control over Percival Creek when they bust a main sewer line and fill up Capitol Lake, because that's happened in Tumwater or Olympia. So I'm trying to figure out the expenditure and time and effort and the benefit that we get when right down the road, just a little ways, they can dump their sewer in there for a month and nothing comes of it. And what, are they in violation of their permit? And so we get to take their birthday away, or what's the deal? I mean, it seems like government always comes up with this stuff that's questionable to benefit the public. Okay, I knew you'd have an answer, sir.
So, maybe we may want to look from a different perspective. It's not like what we get penalized is what we lose in terms of the benefit. Because what we have under the MPDS permit and this proposal, it would miss the deadline. Right now, we'll self-govern any type of violations. We go through the process, identify the violators, and we work with the violations. Absent meeting this deadline, those violations are going to be reported to the state, and the state is the one who takes the next steps. So we lose the ability to work with our own residents in addressing some of these violations. That is what we're losing by not meeting this deadline. So it is, I mean, we can probably argue about the regulatory aspects of government, but those are the conditions in which the state give us the opportunity to be self-governed under that permit. If we miss the deadline, then the state is gonna govern for us.
Okay.
And that's what we are missing. It's not like what we are not
So, do
doing.
you have an answer about the coffee shop? About that little coffee permit?
Caffeine is a pollutant.
Because the state outlines a criteria, right? Within their criteria, there is some certain businesses that meet aspects of that.
Yeah.
How you dispose of the coffee grounds. You know,
I suppose you
and-
put it in a garbage can.
Well, we need to understand that because some may not put in the garbage can. And that's the purpose of it. So, Larry?
Yeah, I could elaborate here. Commissioner Edwards, the permit does allow some deference to the permittees, in this case Thurston County, out of this list of 42 sites, to use our judgment to identify the high-risk businesses to focus our efforts. And so I imagine when we review this list, the coffee stand would fall out rather quick.
And it's a matter of monitoring, not necessarily going with a compliance, just is the monitoring actions that we need to do. Because we're not going through the process and finding or issuing fees. No, it's just, it's part of the context of the permit, which is we're gonna be monitoring those sites as opposed to monitoring the 250, just as an example.
Okay, and I would add that unlike a lot of the other requirements in the permit, this program is preventative. The aim is to prevent problems from emerging. And in discussing with the Phase 1 jurisdictions who've had this obligation in their permit since 2007, out of the requirements called upon them, they consider this program to be one of the most cost-effective and meaningful programs in the permit. Effective in that it prevents problems from occurring, helps protect our infrastructure, our water resources, etc. So it's preventative in nature rather than reacting to a crisis.
Okay, so it's kind of on the honor system and with us trying to do the best job we can for our environment.
And also, we as a county are the ones who govern that aspect through this process. But also, I believe the board has been keen in protecting our water quality.
How about
And
this?
this is one of the elements as to how we're gonna be protecting the water quality to prevent pollutants getting into the water quality.
Okay,
Can I get Commissioner Munster and then
sure,
Commissioner
go ahead.
Brown? Commissioner Munster, do you have questions?
I've got to click off. I have another meeting at 2:30. If Larry's good with it, I'm good with it. I don't have any specific questions. Thank you for the presentation.
Okay. Go ahead.
oh, I guess what I'm wondering about is things like a freeway crash or something that's, it's in the urban or in the rural part of Thurston County, not the urban part. Because I guess they get exemptions, it sounds like. But, okay, now you got a diesel tanker tipped over and dumping into Scatter Creek or whatever it is. I mean, what happens? What do they do about that? I mean, here it's, they have deadlines and stuff like they're putting in place. And I'm all for following all these regulatory things because it keeps our water clean, for an example. But what do we do when it doesn't work? I mean, do they do something to the highway department because they didn't have enough sawdust on hand or to us because we didn't have enough sawdust on hand? Or is it really, we're all gonna do the best job we can with what we got and that's gonna work. They're not taking your paycheck away, as long as you're working at it, that's good enough. But they make it sound like the world's gonna end. If you don't do this on August 1st, we're taking your birthday away. I just hate that type of regulatory oversight. So I get my back up as soon as I run up against regulatory oversight that I know doesn't work. Because I see the creek out here filled up with sewage all the time. where'd it go? Right into the water, you know? So everything we do is negated. The truck wreck, same thing. Everything we've done is negated. And I hear this from the lake people a lot of times where the water from the ditches is going into the lake and that's where the majority of the problem comes from. What the heck? We didn't do it any good by following this apparently. Now, if we keep the body shop from dumping toxic chemicals, that's good. I mean, that's an image that everybody can see. Coffee shop, not so much the body shop. You probably better watch it, so.
You talked about the consequences, so let me provide you with an example. Maybe, must be 2.5, before the pandemic, the brewery, the empty brewery in Tumwater, somebody trespassed and punctured some of the tanks they were holding chemicals.
Yep.
And it started spilling all over the roadways.
In Tumwater.
In Tumwater, yeah. So this is an example of the consequences. And there was obviously a response to prevent that from getting into the water bodies. And it was a very comprehensive response because it is stated as to what the best management practices are included on this as to how we need to respond to those spills. What the consequence of that is there is a huge lien on the property in the millions of dollars to try to compensate for that. And that is the consequences. So for us to be proactive, to avoid to getting into that worst case scenario, this is, and I understand your statement of why I was first, and I get it, I understand it. But sometimes it's just the conditions in which the state has put in front of us that we need to respond to.
Well, even that's a good enough answer, really. I mean, the why, but no, I great. I'm glad you're doing all this. Looks like you're trying your darndest to keep the environment clean, so.
So I guess the next steps is staff is going to go do the public outreach, and then they will come back to the board to see what you have received in terms of the comments. And that will be addressed when the board may consider setting a public hearing.
Okay.
That'll work?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's 2:30 and we are adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry.